Hey folks, it's Grant Estrad here with Big Tough Farmer. This is our first question and answer episode. I am breaking the episodes into actual episodes and briefs, and I think question and answers because when I go to folks' YouTube channels or podcast, I like to know what I'm getting into. So I'm going to be breaking these things down. So this is question and answers. Number one. It's the first question and answer session. We had one of our few but mighty subscribers shoot me a message and asked a great question. This is going to be a very in-depth answer. The question goes like this: I'm in the direct-to-consumer farm sales business. How do I remember the names of customers and other people? And then, in the farming world, you can be commodity, you can sell to the market, you can sell to brokers, you can sell to buyers, private contracts, however you do that. But when you say direct to consumer, that's farm to table, right? So you've got laying hens, you're selling the eggs to the person who's going to consume it, either a restaurant or, an individual. And so this is farmers markets. This is the home delivery. This is shipping. You're not selling cows, you're selling steaks. You're not selling chickens, you're selling chicken breasts, right? And so that's the sphere that they ask this. And so it is so important to remember people's names. Super happy that somebody had sent me that question. So I remember when I was working at a bar in college. It was a college bar, and a friend of mine was on a date with a gal, and he came up to me and he said, "Grant, I'm in a pinch. I need your help." I was working at the bar, so I was on bar staff, and I'm sure, man, what you got? And he goes, "Well, look, I'm on a date with this gal, and I forgot her name," and I still laugh to this day. And I'm like, "Well, how can you go on a date with somebody you don't remember her name?" And he's like, "Man, I just really need your help." And so I was like, "Yeah, no problem, done." And so I was like, "Well, you go back with her, go sit at your table or whatever, and then give me a couple minutes, and I'll make my way over there." And so I did, and I was like, "Hey man, what's going on?" And then so I look at him and I go, "What's the matter? You're not going to introduce me to your date?" And then as soon as I said that, I reached my hand out to shake her hand. I said, "Hey, I'm Grant. Good to meet you." And then she, of course, responded with her name. And then we got the answer to the question that he was stressing over. And then I proceeded to rag on him for him not being a gentleman and introducing her to me. So I got my little dig in to my buddy that evening, and then he got his date's name, which is fairly important thing to remember. So moral of the story is, before you go on a date with a person, do what you need to do to remember their name. Maybe write their name on your hand or something, right? And so I guess that's the first tip of the first question and answer episode, is that if you want to remember somebody's name, especially if you're on a date with them, go ahead and write their name down someplace on your hand, a little cheat sheet. And so yeah, so anyway, so remembering folks' names is very, very, very important, because people respond to their names. And so there's an exercise I love to do with folks, with a live group. If I'm teaching some sort of course or something, or giving a talk, I'll take a picture of the group. It's great with cell phones now, because you can borrow somebody's cell phone, take a picture of the group. They have a group photo, and then you can pass that phone around. Everybody can look at the picture that you just took. You pass the phone around, and so everybody takes a look at the photo, and then I say something to the effect of, "All right, I know exactly what everybody looked at when they first looked at the photo. You looked at the photo, and the first thing that you did was find you in the photograph to make sure that you didn't look stupid, or you didn't have your eyes closed, or you weren't making a weird face or something like that. So whenever you look at a group photo, you're always the person." Or rather, the first thing you do is the first person you look at is you. So we're very we're wired to be self-centered, and so it's not a bad thing. It's how we're wired. It is what it is. And so, so to that point, the one of the things that we hear that brings joy to our ears, or maybe in some context fear, is when we hear our name. And so, when you get home, if you're blessed enough to have a loyal dog at home, when you call your dog by his or her name, they perk up and they absolutely love it, right? So we're no different than the dogs. Like we love hearing our name in positive context, right? And so when you're when you're in sales, or if you want to have in general, if you just want to have a really good relationship with people, you're gonna remember their name. You're gonna utilize their name, and so that's why it's so important. So it's important because it's a way for you to go out of your way to make that person feel that you are paying attention to them, right? And so that's that it's so important. I can't overstress how important this is. This is a skill that you can learn how to do. And so when people say, "Oh, I'm awful at names," yeah, you can tell yourself that every day. It's pretty much bullshit. It's that you just don't practice the skills to remember people's names. And so this is a learned skill. So you can be today, as you're listening, watching me, you could be the worst person in the world to remember a person's name. But you're either choosing to continue down that path, or you're going to make the decision to actually do something about it and put some effort into it. So if you don't put any effort into it, you're not going to learn how to develop the strategies and tactics to remember somebody's name. So that's super, super important. So why do I bring this up? Okay, so strategy and tactics, right? So your strategy is your intention. Like, what are you intending to do here? This is an intentional thing that you're going after to learn how to improve on how to remember people's names. And so you have to have that intention to do that. And then closer related to intention is your strategy. And then you have your tools and your skills. They're two completely different things, okay? Interrelated though. And so we're going to kind of go through that, okay? So you have to develop your tools and your skills. And there's a whole list of skills that you need to learn, and then you can practice them out in the real world, out in the real life laboratory. You can go out and you can practice. There's opportunities for us every day to real life practice these skills and get the reps in, because it's just like any other habit. You have to get the reps in. You have to learn by doing, and you have to change your habits when you're doing it. Okay, so all of this said, if you're like, what do you mean there's skills with learn how to people's names or remember people's names? Well, so this is an example I'll be bringing out a lot while you're with me. So you can have a single-use tool, just a super basic pocket knife, right? So this represents somebody who has a very low-level skill set, right? They have no intention of improving their skill set. They don't have intention, they don't have strategy, and they don't have any tactics that they want to deploy out in the real world, right? So this is the single-use lazy person who doesn't want to put any effort in, okay? The Leatherman tool, right? Super multi-faceted. It's got a whole lot of tools to it. This kind of represents somebody who is prepared, right? So this is somebody who has an arsenal of tools at their disposal, and they are prepared. They've thought about this, and then they've utilized the skill sets, right? So this is like the next level from the single-use pocket knife, right? And then you have somebody who may have more of a toolbox. So I do actually, I've got two sets of this, by the way. This is something I keep standard with me on the farm, and so we can geek out about my my everyday carry, my EDC, my farm EDC. One day we'll do that, another geek out thing. But here I have these pliers. These are these Nipex or Knipex or whatever you say it. They're pliers that go to 3/4 inch. The only reason that I carry this tool with me is because we have a lot of garden hoses and a lot of 3/4 inch fittings on the property. So this tool has I've gotten much use out of this little tiny set of pliers. I actually used a pair this morning, and it saved me from having to go back to the barn and get a pair of pliers. And so it saved me, like, that's always like 20 minutes, right? And so this is not only, and there's actually a Leatherman in here and a single-use knife and another tool. But this is like represents, I have the tools, but I also have strategy and intention with the tools. So this is like the next level. This is, strategy meets tactics, when you have something like this, right? Now, I don't want to go any heavier than this because I'm carrying it on my person, and so like it gets hot and you're working outside and all that kind of stuff. So there's a limit to how much you can carry. That's why we have toolboxes in the barn, in the truck, on the tractor, and so we have other backup tools. But you can kind of see the evolution of what I'm going after here, is that you do need the skills, but you need the intention and you need the strategy to go along with the tools. That's super important. Okay, so let's get. I think we covered that. I think we belabored that point. Okay, and so let me tell you another story. So I was at an event that was taking place at a conference center. And even though I was going from the second floor to the first floor, I took the elevator. And the reason that I took the elevator both up and down during the course of that event was because it put me in the elevator with other people. And one of the reasons I went to the event is for the people, is to meet and network with people. That's literally a big reason why I'm there. And so putting me into the elevator with somebody, even for that brief period of time to go from the first floor to the second floor, it gave me enough of a time window for me to introduce myself and ask them their name, ask them where they're from, what kind of business they have. We were there for a business-oriented event, so I kind of knew what business they were in. What's your specialization? Things like questions like that, right? As opposed to taking the stairs. Now, I was on the second floor, waiting for the elevator to bring me down to the first floor, and a buddy of mine who I know well, he's like, why are you taking the elevator? And I'm like, well, I want to. And so then he like just went straight for the stairs. He went straight down the stairs. Well, the problem with taking the stairs, if you're at an event where you want to meet people, odds are there's not going to be anybody else in the stairwell, and there's not an opportunity for you to stay stagnant with that person on the steps. That would be kind of weird, right? And so so there's not a very good opportunity for you to meet somebody in the stairwell, but there's a great opportunity to meet somebody in an elevator. And so that was my intention, and then my strategy is to take the elevator, right? And then the applied tools, skills, and tactics were the questions that I asked the person in the elevator, okay? And so in order to get to know them and get their name and so forth. And so we were out of state from where we live, and it just so happened that a person I got in a conversation with on the elevator going from the second floor to the first floor, I started chatting with her, and it does take people a little, sometimes they respond extremely well, to this type of like, hey, what's up? My name's Grant, that kind of introduction. Sometimes people are a little shy. She was a little bit on the shy spectrum. And so, older than me, ended up having a daughter my age, but anyway, so I asked her, hey, what do you do? Where are you from? So and so forth. And her daughter ended up living not far from our farm. and general area of the state, right? And so I go, oh, okay. And I was like, yeah, we're not that far from there. And then she asked me, she repeated, she's like, well, what's your deal, essentially? And I told her, and she goes, oh, my daughter actually shops and buys some of your farm products. And so it's that's a true story. That absolutely happened. And another time, I was in a hotel in Mississippi, and I got on an elevator going from the first floor to the third floor. It was a group of ladies that came on the elevator. And these habits are so ingrained in me. If you're in an elevator with me, odds are I might start talking to you. I'm kind of like that guy. And so I started chatting with them, and it took us a little while, but we realized that one of the ladies, they were in their 70s. I'm friends with their daughter. Friends in high school. I've been over to their house before in high school, and so it's like, oh, we hadn't seen each other in 20 years, and they live. She lives right by my parents' house where I grew up, and so we're in Mississippi. I grew up in New Orleans, and so there's that. So I have all these stories of running into people, and then once you start chatting with them, you uncover all the ways that we're connected, right? And so it's so important to kind of get into these kind of like flow type conversations. So, and you're probably thinking to yourself, what in the hell does this have to do with remembering people's names? Trust me and just bear with me. I am in fact getting there with this. And so yeah, we've I think we covered why it's important to remember people's names and use people's names, and it is important to have dialogue with people and put yourself in a position where you're going to have dialogue with people, right? That's super important. Okay, so that has been covered. I hope all that makes sense. Okay, so those are like some of the intentions and the strategy with getting to know and understanding people's names. Okay, so let me give you another example of an intention and strategy that you guys can experiment with, where you can kind of like bring in a skill set. Okay, so let's say you go to Chipotle. Chipotle is like one of the like only fast food type places that like I go to, because it's like reasonably healthy and you can kind of like pick what you're getting, right? Okay, so but it's kind of like a Subway, in that you the person behind the counter is actually spooning out your food. They're of course all the scoops are pre-measured and they've been trained on how much food to give you, but there is a correlation whenever you're in that kind of situation where you have a food server distributing your food. If they have the power to decide how much food you get and you're nice to them, there is a direct correlation with your portion of the meal that you get, right? And so you know that you're going to get at least this much of whatever the food is, right? If you're really nice to your server, the person distributing out your food, in a very short period of time, imagine you go online, Chipotle, they go, what do you want? It's quick, it's popping. So you have to have the answers. So you have a very, very small window to get to know this person. And so, the strategy is, I want to have the intention on, getting a whole lot of food, as much as I can for my dollar, because I want to enjoy myself. So as soon as I get to that person at Chipotle, I make eye contact. I say, how are you doing today? I ask them, how are they doing today? I wait for a response. That's great. And if they have a name tag on, that's even better. And I can say, let's say it's Samantha who's working at Chipotle. Let's say she has a name tag on, it says Samantha. I go, Samantha, I'm doing great. I'm having a wonderful day. How's your day going? And she's go, great, whatever. Okay. And say, okay, I'm going to have this. And so I start chatting with them strategically, using my skills and my tools without messing up her workflow, right? Because she wants to get me down the line so she can take the new customer. And so you have to be on ball, on the ball with this. And so, but odds are is that you're going to end up having this huge, burrito bowl or a big old fat burrito where it's busting the seams out, right? They're just going to, they're going to put the guacamole on your burrito, and you're going to double the calories of what you're eating, but that's fine. Anyway, so that's another story of if you don't believe me, you try it. Anyway, but those are the benefits that you get from actually having this skill set and developing these tools, and be able to just spit them out in very, very quick fashion. And so that's super important. So I had not really talked about this in quite a long time. And so I did do a simple Google search of how to remember names. Okay. And so we're going to go through this quick list that I just went through a search engine. I'm online right now, and I want to run through this real quick. Repeat the name back to the person right away after they introduce themselves. Create a mental image of the person's name. Use word association or make connections. Say the name out loud during the conversation. Pay attention when meeting someone, and use memory tricks. Okay, so those are some of the tools that I've been taught, that I've used for years. And when I say years, folks, I've been geeking out with this stuff for over 20 years in business. So I'm telling you this stuff. There's no question that this stuff works. So that's not even a discussion, really, whether or not these things work or not. They absolutely do work. And so, okay, so let's go through some of these tools and what we can and see what we can do here. Okay, so I recommend that we start with the conversation stack. Okay, so some of you folks may be familiar with Dale Carnegie. He wrote How to Win Friends and Influence People. This is kind of like bread and butter, old school Dale Carnegie stuff. And then you may not be interested in that, and that's fine. But if you want to learn about this, you can go out and get Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. It goes into a lot of examples on this. I don't believe the book goes into a conversation stack. The conversation stack is taught in the Dale Carnegie curriculum, though. So anyway, okay, so conversation stack. Google it, look it up. Essentially, this is what this is a memory image exercise. So when you meet somebody for the first time, you're going to introduce yourself and you're going to ask them what their name is. Okay, so the key here is you're going to imagine an old school like nameplate or label or name tag with the person's name on it. Okay, and then and it's going to say their name. So let's say it's Samantha at Chipotle. Okay, so I go up to Samantha at Chipotle and I imagine the name Samantha, Samantha. I believe that's how you spell it. And so well, for here, this is how we're going to spell it today. And so I imagine the name Samantha, right, written out in my memory. Now, a lot of us remember things in different ways, and that's important evaluation for you to do, so you know if you're, what actually jogs your memory. For me, for example, for me personally, when I have to look at like a phone number from one piece of paper or one screen, I have to jump to my phone. I can't access that piece of paper or screen, whatever the situation may be. I say the phone number out loud, and then when I go to put the number in, I go back on hearing my own voice say the number. And so that's how I remember phone numbers on the fly. And so everybody's a little different. And so anyway, so you may have to say Samantha. And so when you introduce yourself to somebody, going back, it said that on that bullet list that we just went over, is to say the person's name out loud. That's so important. It's super important. It's vital because it does a couple things. One, it starts the beginning of you remembering their name. So Samantha. I'm going to say Samantha out loud. Samantha, it's great to meet you, right? And then if it's like a different name where it's a common name, but it has multiple different spellings, you can even say, for example, let's say her name was Lauren. Well, you can say, oh, is that like a YN or an EN? If it's a guy, his name, he says Chris, and you say, hey, is that like a, KR or like, CH, right? So you make their name actually a topic of discussion. So you actually say it a couple of times. And so, and then it's going to increase your memory. This is like the number one way to remember somebody's name. Anyway, so back to the conversation stack, saying a person's name out loud. So you say Samantha. Okay. And then so you imagine Samantha written out like on a name tag, right? And then the next step is that there's like a house, like a little tiny doll house sitting on top of the name tag, right? And then that is a memory cue for you to ask, hey, well, Samantha, where are you from? No, this isn't the kind of conversation I'm going to have with Samantha in the Chipotle line, right? This is more of like the conversation I'm going to have with Samantha in the elevator, right? So I'm going to say, oh, Samantha, where are you from, right? And she can say, hey, I'm from Baton Rouge, right? So be like, all right, Samantha from Baton Rouge. And so I go, Samantha, you're from Baton Rouge. That's cool. And so now we're starting to tie in Samantha, Baton Rouge, right? And then you can say, oh, Samantha from Baton Rouge. Are you born and raised there, or do you have family there, or whatever? Be like, yeah, I live in Baton Rouge with my husband and my 2 kids. So great. Samantha, who lives in Baton Rouge, lives there with her husband and 2 kids. And so you'd be like, well, Samantha, what do you do? What do you do for work? And be like, oh, I'm a nurse. Okay, so Samantha, who lives in Baton Rouge, has a husband, 2 kids, is a nurse. And then you can say, what kind of nurse? Are you like, whatever. Like, what is your specialty? Do you work in the NICU unit, or do you work in the emergency room? Ask them about their work. And so you'd be like, oh, I'm I'm a specialty surgery nurse. I'm just making this up, so nurses forgive me. So just say I'm a work in surgery, and so surgical nurse. And so it'd be like, all right, so Samantha from Baton Rouge, Samantha who lives in Baton Rouge, who is married, husband, 2 kids, is a nurse, and she works in the surgery ward of a hospital, right? And so and then you'd be like, well, and then let's say you're out of town, okay? And so, well, Samantha, what are you in town for? And do you travel a lot? To be like, yeah, we're here on vacation. We like to come in here to this area once a week or whatever, or they're at a conference or whatever. You get my drift. So you have a name tag, you have like a little dollhouse, right? And then what I forgot to say is that inside the little dollhouse, there's like a family and there's like people in there, right? And then and the other thing I failed to say is on top of the house there might be a work glove, like representing work, and then on top of that work glove there might be like a little airplane talking about travel. And so that you can come up with all kinds of very creative and imaginative conversation stacks, but this is a mental tool for you to get some questions and answers, some Q&A with the individual, so you can get to know them. And so you've also is built in word association with it. So you got Samantha, from Baton Rouge, right? And so you've said her name so many times, naturally, not in a weird, like creepy way. You said her name so many times, you have a word association, her name, with, Baton Rouge, nurse, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, is that repetition is starting to become ingrained into your memory, right? And so after you do this, I swear, after you do this, you may very well remember her as Samantha from Baton Rouge, and that's all that you remember from her. So if you run into her at an airport or a restaurant one day or whatever, and be like, oh, hey, it's Samantha from Baton Rouge. And so that is a great way of remembering somebody's name. So it's like a combo of name repetition, saying it out loud, and building an association with it to personalizing it to that Samantha, right? Because you may know several Samanthas, and so you're going to say, oh, that's Samantha from Baton Rouge. Oh, another Samantha that works at Chipotle. Be like, oh, that's Samantha at Chipotle, right? And so you start coming up with these things. I do this so much to the point to where sometimes if I have to save their number in my phone real quick, like, oh, I want to get this person's name for work or something, I'll just hurry up and put it in my phone as Samantha Baton Rouge, or Samantha Chipotle or something like that. In my phone, I would never show anybody my phone. After saying this, I have nicknames in my phone because like there might be a bunch of Bens, and there might be a bunch of Chris's, and there might be a bunch of Kevins, and so if I don't, due to my own laziness, if I don't put their full name in the phone, I always come up with a some sort of nickname to remember which Kevin it is, which Ben it is, which Chris it is, with which Samantha it is, and that helps me have the word association with it. And in full disclosure, I'm human. Some of these nicknames are derogatory in nature, and they're not compliments to the person, which means that I don't like them. And so usually the people in my phone where I don't have, I have names that are not nice nicknames, is because if they call me, then I know not to answer the phone. And so my favorite one that I have in my phone is, I have several Steves on my phone. I think that there's probably like 10 Steves, Stevens, Stevens with a V, Stevens with a PH, stuff like this. And I do have, I swear, there is a Scumbag Steve in my cell phone. And so when Scumbag Steve calls me, I make sure that I let it go to voicemail. And so I'm guilty of it. I'm human. It's just the way it is. And so that's what I have. That's what I personally do as far as my the nicknames in my cell phone. So that was a lot of information. So Google, look up conversation stack, create your own, right? When you meet somebody, you have to introduce yourself and you have to ask them what their name is. I mean, that's just, you have to do this. And so, and you have to be comfortable with doing this. And if you're uncomfortable with doing this, like if you're shy or if you're little timid, that is perfectly natural for you. Like, that is so natural for you to feel that way. Like, I want to encourage you to say, look, some people are really outgoing and some people are naturally not outgoing. If you're not the outgoing type person, the way that you can get more comfortable with this is practice and repetition, so you can incrementally develop your habits in order to do this, right? So when I in a situation with somebody, I just put my hand out, or actually these days I fist bump, right? And so guys, like, when I'm meeting women, I love fist bumping. It makes them a little bit more comfortable. That's just like what I do. And then I started doing that years ago. We have female staff in our business and stuff like that. And so I just started fist pumping. And then with COVID, we didn't want to shake hands. And then I started fist pumping even more. And now I fist pump. Like, I actually, these days, unless it's like a formal event, or even at events, I fist bump. That's just like what I do. I love fist bumping. I think it's fun. I think it's an icebreaker. It actually it makes people feel more comfortable. It's disarming. And so, it's just like, and then if you ever text me, a lot of times I actually send a little, fist bump emoji. And so, anyway, so if you don't feel comfortable shaking somebody's hand for whatever reason, do a fist bump. Fist bumps are fucking awesome. Do it, right? And so it's like, hey, my name's Grant. Fist bump. You're good. It's just it's a very clean, kind of a deal, right? And so I encourage you to do that if it's appropriate. sometimes it would be very inappropriate to fist bump. And so if it's a formal setting, if it's coat and tie, formal business, of course I'm going to shake hands. You do what you do. When in Rome, do what you do while you're in Rome. It's very important. So anyway, so you meet a person, say, "Hey, my name's Grant. How are you doing today? What's your name?" And then you carry on a conversation. So oftentimes the conversation I have with guys when they want to meet gals, this happened a lot when I was working in bars in college, when I was bartending and stuff. Guys are just scared, absolutely scared to death to go introduce themselves to the gals. Kind of like that cliche, iconic thing of like, teenagers, at the dance at the high school or grammar school dance or something. It's like all the guys are on one side, all the gals are on the other side. They're both scared to death to do anything. And then the way that you get over that is just actually just go and introduce yourself. And so when I was working in bars, guys would come up to me, maybe they felt comfortable with me or I'm friends with them, where I'd be like, "Man, I really want to go meet that girl over there. She seems like awesome. I don't even know how to get started." And I just go up to her and introduce yourself. I was like, "There's not rocket science here." And so, it's just the way it's just the way it is. And so, anyway, so you have to go and put yourself outside of your comfort zone in order to do that. So I want to encourage you to do that. Okay, so let's go back to this little list that we came up with. Repeat the name back to the person right away after they introduce themselves. I think we've belabored that, and we've talked about that so much already. So you have to say, "Samantha, it's very nice to meet you," kind of a thing, right? Create a mental image of the person's name, right? We did that with the name tag, Samantha. We visualized the name spelled out on a name tag, and then we associated it with Baton Rouge in the conversation stack example. Use word association or make connection. So that's Samantha on a name tag, from Baton Rouge. You can visualize Baton Rouge. If you're a Garth Brooks fan calling Baton Rouge, you can think Samantha calling Baton Rouge, right? Garth Brooks, kind of a thing. So that's a word name association to remember her name. Say the name out loud during conversations. And so we've already talked about this. This is where you don't want to be weird, okay? So like if you're like, "Oh, Samantha, so nice to meet you. Samantha, it's Samantha, you're going to Samantha's going to be like, "Who is this freaking crazy person in front of me right now?" And so you have to have some self-awareness when you're doing this, because you're just going to come across as a total weirdo, total creeper, and you don't want to come across that way, right? You want to be like cool and laid back and just casually say, "Samantha, it's great meeting you." And then you can say, "Samantha, hey, it's great meeting you. I'll see you around," kind of a thing. And so don't be a weirdo about it when you're doing that. Say it out loud during the conversation. Pay attention when meeting someone, and use memory tricks. Okay, so there are memory tricks that you can use. I really don't want to go through a ton of memory tricks. "Quote unquote tricks." It has to do with how you remember information, right? And so some of the things that you can do is that you can write their name out, right? Well, these days what you're gonna do is that you're gonna grab your cell phone, and then you're gonna put, you might write yourself a note. One thing that I do is that if it's an appropriate scenario, I get their phone numbers. If it's business or work related or something, I will go, "Hey, can I shoot you a quick text," right? And so it's like, "Yeah, send me a text. We can follow up on talking about grain prices or whatever later on." Be great, and be like, so I go, "Hey, Samantha, it was great meeting you. This is my cell. Look forward to calling, talking to you about current grain prices. Thanks, Grand Estrade." And so super simple, and so you however you want to do that, you need to do that. And I encourage you to do kind of like that, self exploration, with what kind of like memory tricks that that are going to suit your particular way that you memorize and you remember stuff. So I really encourage you to explore that on your own. I want to go back to something. So I did mention I like to fist pump, especially women. If it makes them feel a little bit more comfortable. Um, you know, I've been in so many. Being a guy, I've been in a lot of scenarios, unfortunately, and I'm sorry that they took it a certain way, in professional settings. Like, hey, you want to go get a cup of coffee? With a professional, opposite sex person. And I get a text or an email back being like, I'm married, and I'm like, well, no. I kind of, that's not what I wanted to talk to you, because your company buys what I sell, and so I wanted to set up a meeting. You happen to be the person to talk to. You're the purchaser, and so sorry, I didn't, no, absolutely not. I didn't mean it that way. Please forget it. Give me a call if I can be of any further service, kind of a thing. And so I have been in that scenario, several times, and there's been some mixed messages when you're doing all this, like, hey, what's your name? Where are you from? So just read the room and understand, where you're coming from. That this is so important to do that, because you just don't want to get your wires crossed. Because we're talking about farm businesses and agricultural settings. Look, just to be blunt, folks in agriculture are kind of bad communicators. They don't know how to read the room. They don't know how to kind of like see what the temperature is. They don't, a lot of times, often they don't read body language. And so I'm not getting on anybody. The reason that I'm doing this platform is to help people in agriculture, because they haven't been exposed to a lot of this training. And so, you need to be so careful with this. And so I'll give you what I think is a freaking hilarious example. We have some neighbors that moved into a house that we surround their property on three sides, and younger couple, kids or whatever, and nice folks. I went and introduced myself to them when they first moved in. Said, hey, if you need anything, here's the phone, and here's my number and all this kind of stuff. So they had my phone number, and their dogs kept getting out, and their dogs were they didn't have a leash on them. The male dogs were not fixed, and they were just running around. They were doing a circuit. They were harassing a couple of other dogs in the neighborhood behind the fences, and they started coming on to our place. And so and they would call me being like, hey, where's the dog? Have you seen my dog? And all this kind of stuff. And I honestly, I got tired of their dogs, right? And so because they started coming onto our place and they started harassing some of our livestock. And so I text her, the wife. I go, hey, look, I got to be blunt, whatever. We're at the point now with your dogs that I'm either going to call the sheriff or I'm going to shoot your dogs, whichever comes first. And so, not the nicest text message to say, I admit, but I was kind of done with the dogs. They clearly are horrible dog owners, and they're just doing the whole country thing of like, oh, it's okay to let your dogs run around. Well, us in agriculture know that domestic dogs. I'm concerned more about domestic dogs more than coyotes or foxes or anything else, and so they can cause a lot of damage. And so I'm getting to the point of the story. So then the husband texts me, and after I sent that text message to her, and he said, it's like, I don't want you, texting, what are you doing texting another man's wife? And I was prepared for so many things besides that text, and I was just like, hey man, like, I was just texting her because, like, she texted me. That's the only reason I have your wife's phone number. It's the only reason I'm texting your wife. You know, I was like, he insinuated that I had ulterior motives with texting his wife. But clearly I didn't, because I threatened to shoot her dog. That's typically not how you win somebody over. That is not how you win friends and influence people. You do not win friends and influence people by sending them a text message saying that you're going to shoot their dog. But hey, this is a farming platform, so we're going to talk about that kind of stuff, right? And so just don't get your wires crossed. Read the room. Check the temperature. And try to read the situation. And so anyway, so take that for what it is. That's just that was just a little funny story with that. And so so come up with, going back to the memory tricks, right? So writing a note, texting the person as a quick follow-up note, emailing the person a quick follow-up note. With social media, you can go ahead and friend them on Facebook, start following them on Instagram, on their X, Twitter account, start following them. There's so many digital technological avenues for us to connect with people that could very well be just a modern, quote unquote trick to remember somebody's name. Again, I want to emphasize this, is that if you start to appreciate how important it is to the other person that you remember their name, like once you fully appreciate that, then that's going to be motivation for you to put the effort in to do the repetitions, to form the habit, to develop the skill set. And so that is probably, when it comes to intention and it comes to strategy, you really doing some major reflection and evaluation on, like, okay, why is it important that I remember this person's name? Like, you really, like, that's a big deal. Like, so that is like the cornerstone, the foundation of why you need to remember somebody's name. If you do that self-reflection, and you think about how much joy and how that makes you feel so good when somebody says your name, when somebody says, "Hey Grant, how you doing today?" And I mean, like, I honestly could be having a really, really fucking shitty day, and if a customer rolls up at the farm, or somebody a neighbor rolls up to the farm and they say, "Hey Grant, how you doing today?" Man, it's like a switch. And so it's so important. So, like, we're all going through shit every day. Like, we all have shit in our life going on. Something just broke. Somebody just pissed us off. Somebody just pulled something. Or we just pulled something and we just screwed up and we just made a mistake. And so, most days there's some negative going on. And so if you know that you can go into your day by making somebody feel better just by remembering their name and saying their name, man, that's a huge motivation for you to do this work. So that is probably the number one thing that I want to stress is, what is your why with remembering somebody's name, and what is the power when you can remember somebody's name? It's just so important these days. I really cherish the one-on-one interaction, and I really try to respect that. And I'd rather have fewer interactions of high quality than a high quantity of interactions with low quality. It's kind of like, you go to the doctor's appointment, and this is a big thing that people complain about in medicine, right? It's like the doctors are just spitting you out and churning you out like super fast, where it's kind of like an old school doctor. You go in, hey, it's like that doctor was not rushed. You were the only thing that they were focused on, and you felt like they were paying attention to you, because they were. And so And so that's what you're trying to develop, and that is a huge step with building a solid relationship that's going to last a very long time, have lifetime type relationship. It starts with, hey, my name is Grant. How are you doing today? Oh, my name's Samantha. Samantha, it's great to meet with where are you from? And that's how it starts. That is like the secret sauce of how to have relationships with people, is to introduce yourself, get their name, use their name, remember their name, and then establish those type of connections. And then the other thing I didn't mention is that most of us, whenever you're around your demographic, odds are it's like we're all separated by like 5 degrees of separation or something like that. So if you start talking to somebody, odds are you may know somebody that they know that knows somebody that you know, and so you can develop that social network affiliation, as a quote unquote memory trick or memory tool to remember them. I mean, look, you see that on Facebook, right? So you're friends with somebody, you just met with somebody, you send them a friend request, they accepted your friend request, and then you go look at who their friends are, and then it says mutual friends, and you're like, oh my God, this is how I know. I know this person, so you develop that association, and so it'll allow you to remember their name that much easier. And so knowing why you're going to remember their name, and the other thing is, your strategy or your intention needs to be genuine. It can't be it shouldn't be to manipulate and to take advantage of, right? And so everything that we just talked about are the tools of liars and con men and con artists, right? And so con artists are super slick. They make you think all kinds of things like, oh, this person cares, this person's sincere, no, this person used my name. These are the skill sets of con artists, and to the point to where a lot of times folks in agriculture, because they're so humble, and because being like a sales type person or an outgoing type person, a lot of times that is actually deemed like inappropriate or offensive, or it must have like some sort of evil intention to it. I mean, it can be, right? Like, you can either be like a legitimate person, or you can just be a con artist. The tools are actually the same. And so that's unfortunate that people with bad intentions or evil intentions, to steal from you, rob from you, take advantage of you, they come off as super slick people. And that's why if you don't have self-awareness, and you're not, reading the room, you're not checking the temperature of the room, you can be seen as somebody who's so slick that you're automatically suspect, because you have a high probability of maybe being a con artist. And so that's something that you gotta understand. You've got to understand that. So you have to be cool, you have to be chill, you have to read the room, you have to read the body language, you have to know what kind of situation you're in, what kind of scenario you're in, what kind of culture you're in. You got to understand all these things, right? And so it's all these things depend on what the situation is. Are you at church? Are you at a bar? Are you at a work function? Are you at a friend's birthday party, a social function? It all depends, and you have to abide by the cultural norms within reason. Except for fist pumping. That's gonna, like I said, that's gonna disarm and break the ice. So try fist pumping instead of shaking people's hands. And so I think that's it, man. I think that kind of covers the question, from our subscriber of, and again, the question is, I'm in direct to consumer farm sales. How do I remember, the names of my customers? And so that's how you remember the names of your customers. And you can go a step further if you're doing direct marketing or direct sales, you sending them customized texts, customized emails, you communicating with them, you calling them on a phone, you asking them, if they come in, if you have a brick and mortar store, they walk into your shop, hey, Samantha, how are you doing today? What's going on? How are the kids? How's the husband? How's Baton Rouge, right? Or if you're at a farmer's market and you have a stand, Samantha comes walking up. You say, hey, Samantha, what's going on? Blah, 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 blah. Like you use their name and you will remember your name. Okay. We're going to be wrapping up soon, but this is something that's so important. So important. I want to stress this. If you forget somebody's name, do not get embarrassed. Do not feel bad. Do not avoid it. Straight up tell the person you forgot their name. I do it all the time, and it works out great. You know why? Because we all forget people's names. We're all human. We all do it. We all have shit going on. We're all super busy. And so you say, hey, look, I'm going to apologize up front. I forgot your name. Can you please tell me your name again? And I've done that so many times that I'm not embarrassed by it at all whatsoever, right? And so now that's me. That doesn't bother me. I'm an outgoing person. That's just the way it is. So don't be afraid to do that. You will actually oftentimes earn their respect and their gratitude if you're that upfront with them. And so, I've said that, and then you know what they go? They go, I forgot your name. I'm so happy you reintroduced yourself. That happens all the time. And so this is another thing that you can do. If Kate and I go to a social function, we're on a date, we're going to like a party or a wedding or, whatever, we're going to an event, the rule I always, and she goes, I know. I go, Kate, remember, if I do not introduce you to the person, assume that I've forgotten their name and hurry up and introduce yourself and beat me to the punch. And so, you need to get, when you're with somebody, get their back, right? And so have a plan and have a strategy and be prepared before you go into a social event. And you say, look, honey, if please, if I don't introduce you to somebody immediately, I need you to jump in immediately and say, hey, so if I'm with Kate, Kate's going to go, hey, my name's Kate. And then they're going to introduce themselves, and I'm just going to stand there with a smile on my face looking like an idiot, right? And so then we're going to get their name. So that's something else that you can do in order to get somebody's name that you've forgotten. And look, if you're, I get it. If you're too embarrassed to say, hey, I forgot your name to their face, and you don't have a wingman, to help you ascertain or get the person's name, go up to somebody that you know at the event and say, hey, look, you see that person over there? What's their name? Can you tell me? And they go, oh, that's Bob. Be like, oh, thank you so much. I totally forgot his name. I really liked him. I really hit it off with him. I like the vibe that he puts out. I wanted to go talk to him about, the chicken feed that he sells or whatever. I forgot his name, and I wanted to go and then reintroduce myself. And I'm going to go, hey, Bob and Grant, I spoke to you, blah, blah, blah. And then you start talking about whatever you're going to talk about. And so there are some ways that you can get somebody's name if you've forgotten their name. And so you want to develop the strategy and skill set and the tools to remember somebody's name, but you also want to come up with genuine, for the power of good, not evil, ways to get what their name is by having a wingman, admitting to them that you've forgotten their name, or just asking somebody else like, hey, do you know what their name is? And so it's so important. This is a vital life skill to remember. And so I really hope that this answers this person's question, and I hope that it helps you all out with remembering people's names. I'm really big in making sure that everybody knows what resources that you can go to after you finish listening to what I have to say. This is my copy of Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. A rat chewed on it at one point. And so absolute legit, book on the importance of asking people questions and using their name, in a genuine, worthwhile, for the power of good, for the good side of the force way. And so I recommend that. And look, I just Googled, like I said, I Googled how to remember people's names, and look, it just comes up. On the internet, on your computer. There's I'm just looking at there's a Wired article from Wired magazine. I love those guys. Psychology Today, WikiHow, The Guardian, Mind Tools. I mean, guys, it's just endless articles on how to remember people's names. And so, and you might be listening to this, be like, man, I didn't even know that was a thing. Like tools and skills to remember people's names. That's awesome. So I hope this helps everybody. Thank you for the subscriber, for not only being a subscriber, but also reaching out to me and being proactive and asking me a question. I'm super happy to get it. I'm super excited about this platform. Love talking about this stuff. And if I meet you one day in person, and if I forget your name, I apologize in advance, and I hope that you reintroduce yourself to me, just like I will reintroduce myself to you. And with that, my name is Grant Estrad, and it was a pleasure being with you on this first episode of Question and Answers. And as usual, we will close out with the BTF mantra. As a BTF, I will strive to sharpen both myself and others every day, knowing that I may fail. I will start each day anew by influencing what I am able to do relative to my own skills and talents. I will lead by example physically, mentally, morally, socially, and ecologically. I will incrementally do the work required to elevate myself, my goals, my team, and my leadership abilities. Everybody have a good one. Thank you so much.